Liebe Community, herzlich willkommen hier auf meinem Kanal. Ich möchte heute zunächst etwas machen, das ich sonst nicht tue. Ich möchte betonen, dass ich die Position meines heutigen Interviewpartners nicht in jeglicher Hinsicht teile. Ich halte es dennoch für wichtig, dass wir in einer demokratischen, freien Gesellschaft miteinander im Diskurs bleiben, weshalb ich mich dazu entschieden habe, den umstrittenen Gesprächspartner auf meinem Kanal zu einem Interview einzuladen. Und nun viel Spaß mit dem hoffentlich spannenden Gespräch. Dear community, welcome to another interview here on my channel with my today's guest, the famous radio host of the United States, Alex Jones. Welcome, Alex.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you for your time and the opportunity to be doing this interview with me here today. You are, for those who don't know you, the founder of Infowars, a media platform on which political topics are published. In the US, you are known for your controversial opinions on actually every political event that took place in the last 20, 30 years. Last year, you made headlines again when you were ordered to pay a historic 1.5 billion fine for your statements about the Sandy-Hook shooting. Yeah, Alex, today I want to talk to you about the ongoing process and for sure the current geopolitical situation. But before we start, Alex, how are you doing? How is life going in the US so far?
Well, we have the same globalist forces surveilling us, censoring us, and collapsing our borders, destroying our currencies, and funding the beginning of World War III. And so I personally am doing great. I have 4 children. I'm happily married. And I'm in the fight for human freedom and a true liberal system, not the false fascist system that masquerades as liberal. And so, I personally am in the fight, so I feel good about that. But I'm very, very sad for the state of the world. I'm very sad for what's happening for all sides in Ukraine and all the death there. I'm very concerned about moves now to go to war with China. And so I really am concerned. We have the major international organizations like the Atomic Scientists Group that estimate we're the closest nuclear war we've ever been in the history of nuclear weapons since 1945. And so the world is about just a few seconds to midnight. And so that's what I'm really concerned about. So really, I guess I'm not doing too well. The world's not doing too well, but it seems like so many people aren't aware of this. And we're sleepwalking into Armageddon.
Okay. Yeah, Alex, before we get into those topics, I was doing some researches before and I found for sure many hundreds interviews of you, but I couldn't find any with a German host. So is this your first interview with a German host?
Yes, I think I've been interviewed once many years ago for German TV. It was a taped interview. And then I've also been interviewed by some of the newspapers there. But they're just like our media. They totally made stuff up. Just completely made up what I said in the interview. It wasn't even what I said. Yeah. That's why I prefer television, because it's harder for them to manipulate it.
Gefällt dir dieses Interview und die Inhalte auf meinem Kanal? Dann kannst du mich ganz einfach unterstützen, indem du mir ein Abo schenkst, dieses Gespräch mit all deinen Freunden und Bekannten teilst und einen Kommentar für den Algorithmus dalässt. Und jetzt ganz viel Spaß beim weiteren Schauen des Interviews. Yeah. Okay, so Alex, let's get into the legal process that takes place at the moment against you. First, as a context for my audience who maybe can't remember the Sandy-Hook shooting, it was a mass shooting in December 2012 with 26 victims. 20 of them were between 6 and 7 years old. It was one of the most terrifying shootings because the victims were children. Barack Obama, who was president at that time, said it was his worst day of his presidency. You, Alex, you claimed it was all a hoax. You said it was staged in order to disarm American people. Alex, do you regret what you said? Would you say it was a mistake?
Well, I'm happy to get into the subject, but it takes a while to explain it all. But I guess I'm best known for that, so we might as well. Over 10 years ago, that event happened. And for the first year or so, I barely even talked about it. And I thought that maybe they had people that knew it was going to happen and let it happen. And there was some evidence of that. with the CIA and FBI visiting the shooter, Adam Lanza, who was on a bunch of SSRIs. His mother got the gun legally and then gave it to him. He killed her and then killed the children. And then some professors in Florida and Wisconsin and other areas, and Steve Pachinik, who'd been the head of CIA psychological warfare operations at the State Department, they came out and said that they believed it was staged. So then I did a few shows on that. When I was banned on Twitter and Facebook and everything 5 years ago now, almost 5 years ago, there's no mention of me being banned because of that. Okay. Mm-hmm. Then a PR firm was hired and basically went and got clips of what I said, and the Democrats ran national TV ads out of context saying I was sending people to people's homes, that I was telling people to pee on people's graves, and made it this huge thing that I hadn't covered in many, many years. In fact, in 2015-16, I never even mentioned it, long before I got sued. So years would go by where there's not one mention. They only entered in court against me 24 minutes of video. And that was me saying I could see how people think this is staged. I could see with how much other stuff's been staged that this could be. So it was just a way to try to destroy me. So the PR firm got the media to run thousands of stories in 2016-17 saying I was doing things I never did. Then they sued me. They did several years of discovery, found no proof that I did some premeditated thing to, quote, make money off Sandy-Hook. It was a blip on the radar, still a tragedy, but a blip on the radar for what we covered. And I mean, there's been hundreds of mass shootings since then. It's a real tragedy, but it shows mental illness. It's like there's been hundreds of car attacks. We don't blame the car. We don't blame the gun. We blame the crazy person. But in hindsight, then the PR firm came out later and bragged how they'd basically taken things I said, took them out of context, blew it up and made it an issue. Wasn't an issue, wasn't in the news. I wasn't associated with it until the Democratic Party ran around $30 million worth of ads against Trump saying, I'm Trump's brain. I tell Trump what to do, which wasn't true. And that Trump wouldn't disavow what I said. So it made it a huge national issue 6 years after, or about 5 years after it happened. And I didn't really know what was going on at the time. Like, why are there thousands of articles a week? Why are there hundreds of TV programs? I mean, hundreds, sometimes a month, thousands over the years. In that year and a half before they sued me. And then it was just making me the Sandy Hook guy and this big villain. Then they didn't have any evidence. So they had the Democrat Party controlled judges in Austin, that's very controlled, one of the worst jurisdictions for kangaroo courts, and in Connecticut, one of the worst jurisdictions. Both judges found me guilty. Now in America, you're innocent until proven guilty. A judge doesn't find you guilty. But the judge found me guilty and then told the jury I was guilty and then let them put on all the evidence they wanted, but we couldn't put on evidence. So that's a show trial, and that's what they're doing now with the Dominion voting machine deal and Fox. The judge found Fox guilty of lying, which judges don't do that, but now they do, and told the jury they are guilty. You just decide how guilty. So it's called the death penalty option. It's never really ever been done, and it's called a default judgment. And so now they're going for default judgments everywhere, and so it's the same story over and over again. Trump was just found guilty civilly for saying he was innocent. And he never met this woman and didn't rape her. She didn't have any witnesses, didn't say it for decades. There's a statute of limitations. They didn't care. So a civil jury, same thing, found him guilty not of rape, but of saying he was innocent. That defamed her, saying she was a liar. Well, under U.S. law, and I believe under German, European law, you're allowed to say you're innocent. So this is how the deep state's operating, is through these weaponized courts, and then they just use people that are low level as the pawns. I feel sorry for them, but that's what happened. They also lied to the media, and they had financial experts that told the jury that I was worth personally $280 million, and that my company was worth $40 million. And we gave them our real financials, that the company had about $2 million in it, and that I was worth a few $1 million and had 2 houses. Didn't matter. They just published fake numbers. That I was paid $62 million last year. I was paid $2 million. After legal fees, barely paid my bills. My legal bills were over $1.5 million. So and I've never measured myself by money or anything. But I mean, I drive a regular car, live in a nice house, but I'm not, just trying to make money here. And so it was all a fabrication. The response to the media, the whole thing. And now in hindsight, it's been a learning experience. And so just like I was the first to be banned everywhere, then I was the first to be hit with lawfare. That's what they call lawfare. And now they're doing it to everybody else. So, and the public's really woken up to this. We've got more support a lot of people believe the disinfo in the media about me and what I said and did around Sandy Hook. But once they saw the 2 show trials on national television, on basically every channel, people saw us not being able to say we were innocent, not being able to question, not being able to put on evidence. The judge in Texas, when the financial expert who never examined our books or anything, just said, I believe him and his company are worth $400+ million. We were not allowed to respond or even talk and say, hey, we weren't allowed to tell the jury that I was in bankruptcy with federal filings showing I didn't have this money. So, and so they have headlines, Jones refuses to pay $1.5 billion historic judgment. Jones is refusing to pay, as if I have $10 million, much less $1.5 billion. And they're not done. They've got another trial coming up in the winter of this year of more of the plaintiffs. So, and people say, why did I laugh at the $1.5 billion judgment? Because if they said they wanted a gallon of blood, I might be able to give a gallon of blood and live, but you only got like 3 gallons of blood in you. If they asked for 10,000 gallons, it's ridiculous. It's like saying, we're going to shoot you 5 times. I'm like, please don't do that. That'll kill me. But they say, no, we're going to shoot you 1,000,000 times. I mean, 1.5 billion is the GDP of many countries. Okay. So it's just preposterous. It's absolutely preposterous and a very, very sad situation.
So what I'm asking, and many people out there, is what do you think is the intention behind it, the trial against you? Do they want to silence you? You just said the deep state is behind it. So what's the intention behind all of this, Alex?
I mean, they said they are. The Democratic Party, Senator Blumenthal out of Connecticut, a couple of other senators, they said at both the show trials, we want to shut him down at press conferences. We want to silence him and use this as the model to shut down all the other populists. And so that's what they do. They sue you. They have a controlled judge. They default you. You can't defend yourself. And then they have a trial on damages in front of a jury.
Yeah, so at the moment, it seems that you are paying, in the truest sense, a very high price for your work that you did in the past. But on the other hand, none of the people who lied and betrayed the US public in times of wars, and especially now in pandemics, none of them were ever held legally accountable. So why the hypocrisy? What do you think?
Well, that's right. You know, Obama said Sandy Hook was the worst day of his presidency. He bragged and said, I'm really good at killing people with Predator drones. And he would order and not apologize. They'd bomb a wedding of 200 people and kill 50 of them, 60 of them, including children. And he felt good about that. So they flip on their emotions. They flip off their emotions. And so I was against those drone attacks on innocent civilians. You know, Madeleine Albright, you can pull the clip up, just type it into YouTube. Madeleine Albright says 500,000 children dead in Iraq from sanctions, a good price to pay, and she'd do it again. The first Gulf War, I believe, was a fraud and built on lies, not defending Saddam, but you know, that's a whole other, a debate and discussion. That was wrong. But the sanctions were strong, but not enough to kill 2 million people, it's estimated, even by the UN. Once the Clintons get in and all the things that happened with them, they tripled the sanctions on all medicine, all chemicals, anything you could use to make our industrial society. They even have stuff for baby formula. So they estimate over 2 million Iraqis died. When the Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright, did her interview, it was 500,000 children. It's estimated by the end of the sanctions, it was 2+ million, half of them children. So over 1 million dead children. And she told Leslie Stahl in 60 Minutes, she said, I'd do it again. Yeah, we killed 500,000 kids. I'll do it again. But she's a woman. She's a liberal. So she killed 500,000 kids with her policies. And she said she's proud of it. And the left's like, man, that is fantastic. So, and they lied about the WMDs and all of it. And you think about all the crimes and all the things the system's done. And then they take a few clips of me going, to callers and guests. Yeah, I agree. It could probably be staged. But that's my right to say that. But I never called families or harassed families. There was a big national movement of people that didn't believe it. And people going up there themselves. That's why I started covering it, saying maybe it didn't happen. And then I learned that some of the people doing stuff were a little unhinged. And I actually do believe it happened. So, and I've been saying that for about 6-7 years before I got sued. So again, this is all, people ought to ask themselves, why is Alex Jones questioning a shooting tens of thousands conservatively? of articles. I mean, they'd put out one AP article and then it would be republished in every local TV station. It would be in every local newspaper. When I say tens of thousands of articles, sometimes I'd go into Google Alerts in the morning. There'd be 15,000 articles about Alex Jones. Now, it'd be 30 or 40 articles republished everywhere, but 15,000 a day. Now, that's the type of propaganda you have when you invade a country. But they were invading America. The globalists were setting the precedent to get rid of free speech in this country. Even the Wall Street Journal, right before I got banned everywhere, said Alex Jones is going to be basically shut down, and so will Julian Assange. And when the right wing doesn't stand up for Jones, and I'm not really right wing, but that's how they that's how they define me. I'm more complex than that. Yeah. And they said and when the left doesn't stand up for Assange, we will then have the precedent set to ban everybody else. And so we've seen that. So I was kind of the lead elephant they were taking out. And so I'm kind of honored because the tens of millions that have been censored and surveilled, no one knows who they are. Or no one, it's just normal now. But I was the first big person to be taken down. So people remember that. And it's actually in ways made us more influential and more powerful. And so I wasn't convinced by their mind game that it was over for me. And I wasn't convinced I was a bad person, so it's over for me. They've had the Justice Department try to indict me. They've had criminal investigations of me, a whole bunch of them. I've been subpoenaed by Congress. And it's always the opposite of reality. We did dozens of Trump rallies. We had several before January 6th with 500,000 people, no violence, other than Antifa attacking some of the communist goons. And then on January 6th, there was over 1 million people there. A couple 100,000 go to the Capitol where Trump was supposed to speak. A couple hundred break in. I go there and try to stop them. And the Justice Department and Congress tried to have me indicted for trying to stop it. And they did indict my co-host for being there with me, trying to stop him going in the building. So at this point, I mean, look, they want me to be ashamed. They want me to think I've done something bad. I see through it and the public sees through it. And so I'm not bragging when I say this. It's a gauge or a bellwether or like a censor. The general public is not well known, which is a great thing to have your anonymity. I'm extremely famous and they try to make me infamous. I go out now, and just 5-6 years ago, I'd go out and shake 20 hands before one person said, F you, you're a Russian agent, or Sandy-Hook, or I'm going to do this to you. Now, and I'm going to knock on wood, it's been about 8-9 months since I've been confronted. I took my wife out to eat Italian food last Thursday with one of our musician friends, and literally, I go in the restaurant, it was a little bit early, there's only 5-6 groups in there. And by the time I left, an hour later, every group had come over and shook my hand and said they knew I was right, that the system was setting us all up, that the globalists are bad. Then I walk outside to go to the parking lot in my car, walk by 3 groups of people of every race, color, and creed. All 3 groups stop and take pictures and say they've woken up and see through it. So I want the globalists to know their attempted project to make me the devil did the opposite. It actually made us stronger and a symbol of the resistance. And so, yeah, if I'm the black sheep, I own that title. If I'm the villain to this evil global empire, well, then that must mean I'm the good guy.
So as you just said, there are thousands of articles being published about your trial, your process that is going on at the moment. One of those articles was a article from the New York Times, and they claimed that you have transferred millions of dollars of cash and assets to family and friends. Is this true, Alex, or is it fake news?
Absolutely 100% fake. My dad is a chemist and a doctor, and he's quasi-retired. I hired him 12 years ago because he'd been involved in getting FDA approval on stuff, and I wanted him to run my supplement company. He owned he created a supplement company, and so I've been buying products from him for 12 years. So they look at product purchase and say, look, he's transferring it to his family, and they take gross purchases over a decade plus of millions of dollars of supplements and just call it all profit and say it's a transfer. It's a 12-year-old company that operated for 8 years before I got sued. And it's completely legitimate, and we just sell vitamin C and, turmeric, which Whole Foods sells and Walmart sells, and we sell bone broth. We buy it from the same big top company and private label it. Oh, we sell bone broth. And then they call that a fraud. Oh, I sell water filters. Oh, I'm a kook. So that's the little games they play look, you you give your dad money. It's all semantical games.
So, Alex, what's next for you? Will you continue to be politically active, or has the system reached its goal and shut you down?
No, the system's done the opposite. They have put us into a category of uncancelable, unstoppable. They might be able to shut down this office or this operation, but I'm just being loyal to my crew. I'm tired of Austin. It's like Los Angeles now. And I really want to move to a quasi-rural area. And so I've got offers, in different parts of the country to work for other groups.
But
and then I can just come in and...
How is this working? I mean, your company Infowars went bankrupt, and you also had to file for personal insolvency. So how do you manage it, like money-wise?
Well, again, that's the media misrepresenting. There's something called Chapter 11, Subchapter 5. And that's a reorganization. So you notice Trump's declared bankruptcy 3 times. He's still around, right? So what they do is they misrepresent again what I'm doing, what's happening, what's going on. I used the bankruptcy process because I was basically out of money from litigation to have them stop lying and saying I'm worth all this money. And so the company was right on the edge, not being able to pay the bills. So was I. And I just put my cards down, and they lied about the cards. And they said oh, look, this is hundreds of millions of dollars over the years. Yeah, of cost and product and employees and satellite uplinks and servers. They just called the gross amount money that's in my bank. But now they know, and they've had to admit it's come out in the court, and it's all been forensic accountants and outside accounting groups. I just lifted up my skirt and said, here it is. And now their lies don't then produce a real thing. It's not like Oprah Winfrey's The Secret, where you say, I'm a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I turn into Tyrannosaurus Rex, or I turn this clipboard into gold because I say abracadabra. That's not the reality. And so, so I'm fine. I've never needed opulence or extravagancy. I've got, under Texas law, you can't take somebody's homestead. I got my house, got my car. What matters is my family and my children. And so that's it. If anything, the only way they hurt me is distracting me from my work. It is distracting me from my work. And my biggest enemy is myself, eating too much, and not exercising, and drinking too much. So, on a scale of stuff like, family members that have health problems, that's a 10. And possible nuclear war, that's a 10. This lawfare and this stuff, and then these people trying to make me give up, it's the opposite. In fact, I told my wife, my second wife, my current wife, my great wife, when we got married 7 years ago, I said, within about 5 years, want to phase this out and just do a once-a-week podcast and write books and make 1 film a year. At the time I've been doing this like 24 years. Now it's 29. And so I said, I want to quit this. We won't have as much money and things, but we'll be able to live a simpler life and live in the country somewhere. And she was pregnant at the time. She said, I like that. I want to live with chickens and horses and, my dad has a ranch. We could live there, family property. And so I was intending to leave and be off the air by now and have done my work and exposed the globalists and just kind of receded and still write books and things. But no, because of them, I now take a lot of the interviews we're offered. We're offered dozens a day, but I take a few a day. And so now because of them, I'm not going away. And now because of them trying to shut me down, I'm going to broadcast until I'm 150 years old.
So, Alex, let's close this chapter of your trial and look back to what happened in your show last week, as the famous American rapper Kanye West was there as a guest, and he is now known as Ye, as he calls himself. And he caused a scandal on your show when he said, I like Hitler, I love Jews, but I love Nazis too. I assume you remember.
Yes, I remember.
So what do you agree on what he said? You're in a German show, and it was, for us in Germany, we were all thinking what happened to our famous rapper Kanye West. What was your impression? How do you look back in this on this event?
Well, first off, everything I do is free to air, so you're welcome to use any of the interview you want. And in the interview, I obviously told him I don't agree with that. And then I said, okay, well, you've said it 5 times. Now can we stop? And he went on for over 2 hours repeating it over and over again. I think trying to be infamous trying to be shocking. He'd been saying he was going to come on the show for years, and we've been talking quite a bit on the phone for a long time. And I was trying to convince him to get off the racial stuff and be a unifier. And then he said, well, I'm going to fly to town tomorrow. That's about how much notice I got. And can I come on your show right at the start? I thought that was a little weird. He wanted to come on right at the beginning. But that's because he showed up 2 minutes before we went live in a face mask and came on and started saying he loves Hitler. And then I tried to explain to him that World War II is not just something that people claim happened, and that both my grandfathers were in World War II in the Army Air Corps, and then one of them served out after his 22 missions out of North Africa into Italy, bombing Italy, and then later he went into Italy as ground forces. He saw the starvation alone, and the war killed 22 million Germans, millions and millions of Jews, millions and millions of everybody. I mean, World War II just in Europe killed 26 million Russians. We're talking probably 60, 70 million dead in Europe. So the denials that this went on are just preposterous. It was a giant meat grinder. And so, I told him, I said, it's preposterous what you're saying. It's absolutely preposterous. My grandfather, Jerry Jones, saw the U.S. troops with bulldozers after they captured Germany, literally with piles of dead bodies 50 feet high, they were having to shove into mass graves. And it was a lot of dead Germans, too, from the different diseases and starvation. But no, Hitler, there was a final solution. That was all going on. And I don't minimize the going after the Jews. That was really the apple of his eye. But the war was killing people on all sides, and it was massive. I mean, Poland got criticized a few years ago. I think their president for saying, "Hey, we got more people killed than the Jews did." And it's not belittling the Jews. Just I think like probably 10 million, 12 million Poles got killed. So this was really, really bad. And it was bad for everybody. And so I don't think Hitler was good. I obviously see Kanye also thinks, because he's a designer and likes design, that Hitler designed all that. Germany was the leader, the Austro-Hungarian Empire, up through World War I, and then even through Versailles. No, the Germans know this. In chemicals and in biology and in art and in culture was the leader, and even above America. And England was very predatory at the time. I'm not an Anglophobe, not an Anglophile, but the British wrote thousands of articles saying the German problem, the Austrian-Hungarian Empire problem, we need another war with them. So they basically started World War I, killing the Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Everybody knows that, the Black Hand. And then out of those wrongs, it created the dictator Hitler, who then wrecked everything even worse. But Germany was innovating in cars and in rockets and in highways and in everything. And Hitler just kind of got that when he came in. So people then see that and see that how powerful the German engine was of industry and art and culture. And then they think, oh, Hitler came up with that. So I think he's enamored with that false idea that Adolf Hitler invented all these things. No, Adolf Hitler didn't invent these things. He basically was able to take over the dominant industrial society at the time.
So that's a good keyword. Let's get from the case Kanye West to the current geopolitical situation. Let's get into Ukraine war. In the Ukraine war, Russia claims that Ukraine is a fascist country controlled by Nazis. Alex, how do you see this? Do you agree with this with the statement, or is this just Russian propaganda? What would you say on this?
Well, I mean, I think obviously both sides put out propaganda. People think of propaganda as a bad thing. It just means to propagate, like throw seeds out as propagation. So propaganda itself has a negative connotation today, but propaganda just means putting something out. So there's white propaganda, there's gray propaganda, and there's black propaganda. White propaganda is true, like sunshine is good for you and helps produce vitamin D, so go out and get some and be healthy. That's white propaganda. It's true, it's good advice. Like drink good, clean water. Don't smoke cigarettes. That's white propaganda. Gray propaganda is where you use something true, but try to get somebody to do what you want using the truth that helps you, but doesn't really help them. That's gray. Black is pure lies, pure deception, manipulation. And so I've studied Russia. I've studied the EU. I've studied all the things that are going on with NATO. And I would say that Russia is amateur at propaganda. And Russia is not a threat to the West. Russia is not a threat. And we know, because Zbigniew Brzezinski bragged about it, so did George Soros on CNN, that they overthrew the Ukrainian elected government 9 years ago, and this proxy war started then. And then a year and a half ago, the Russians in the east were being driven out and their pipelines being taken. So Putin basically believes, and I can see the point, forced to come in, though he walked right into a trap, and I said that on air, don't do it. So there's blame on both sides, but I'd say 80% of blame goes on to NATO and on to the globalists, and they're using Ukraine as a proxy war, which we know happened in World War II as well. And so there really are battle lines for anybody that knows recent history, that the west of Ukraine is historically Catholic, the east is Orthodox. Ukraine and Russia was founded by the Orthodox Church 1,000 years ago or so, right in that area. That's where the Russia started. And so it really is a Slavic Russian culture, but there's major Western influences. Hitler had some of his biggest foreign brigades out of Ukraine. And so a lot of this Azov battalion group, their best soldiers, if you see them and everything they are more Germanic than Slavic, but they have a lot of Slavs involved. And it is a Aryan supremacy group. And so to say that all the Ukrainians are Nazis is not accurate, but the core of the original split by the end of World War II between the Red Army and the Nazis, and the Red Army that beat the Nazis in Ukraine and then Poland and then into Germany and the rest of it, we know the story, ending at the chancellery there with Hitler committing suicide. It really is true that there is a large vein of Nazism and fascism in Ukraine, and the fact that they have a Jewish president doesn't allay that, and it's just a fact. I mean, there's CNN and PBS documentaries from 5-6 years ago about Ukraine's Nazi problem, and so it's not like they just have some units that are Nazi. The dominant thing is Nazi, but Germans in World War II were seen by soldiers as great soldiers, so it's more like a fan club or more like wanting to be rebel. A lot of them actually aren't following Nazi ideology, but they think it's cool. A lot of U.S. military troops have SS rune tattoos. Some of the Wagner groups, some of the Russian top soldiers have the Nazi stuff as well. So it's kind of a bad boy thing. But with the Azov battalions, they hail Hitler. They do blood and soil rituals. They actually follow the Hitlerian program and are actually doing that. And so if there's any propaganda, the Russians are simplifying it down to their Nazis, we're fighting Nazis, but it's really true. But the main reason they're attacking is not because they're Nazis. They're attacking because the West is funding them, the U.S. 170 billion, the EU 20 billion, in this proxy war that's insanely dangerous. And we're already in World War III that could lead to a nuclear war.
So if you now follow Western media, they claim that Russia is not only waging a military war against Ukraine, but also a systemic war against Western democracy and the whole Western way of life. That's Western propaganda. Would you agree on that?
It's 100%. I mean, Putin's Victory Day speech last week was really dead on. The whole thing, I played it on air. The whole thing was, I agree with it all. It's just historically true. You can't disagree with reality. Doesn't mean I agree with him invading. I think he went into a trap and bit off more than he could chew. Because I knew the U.S. military has been over there for years setting this up. And I said that on air. I said, don't go in, Putin. The U.S. military, the best soldiers are waiting. They're trained, giant stockpiles of high-tech weapons. You know, and the U.S. military is fighting all the time. The Russians haven't been fighting in a long time. So just because they had successes in Syria, I believe Biden pulled out of Afghanistan to look weak to precipitate the Russians going in. But your question was it was a good question. What was it?
Like, if I'm following Western media, they claim that Russia is not only waging a war against Ukraine, like a military war, but also
but American and Western freedoms. Yeah.
It's also a systemic war against Western democracies. So that's actually the interpretation here in Germany, all over in the West. So do you agree on that?
Sure. That's a great question. Let me answer, because I started answering and forgot the question.
Go ahead.
Okay. The CIA is a globalist coup over America. Multiple presidents have said it needs to be gotten rid of. It works against our country. So if the CIA's transgender, anti-family, open border, fentanyl, collapsing, warmongering culture is American culture, then yes, the Russians are against it. But Americans, like myself, don't want power, don't want control, don't want to dominate the world. We ideologically want to live in a good, decent, wholesome, traditionalist, low crime, capitalist, competitive, society where we don't force Christianity on people, but that's the ethos of the nation. Okay, because if you don't have that, evil then comes in and supplants it. And so Putin explained that the West has been captured by looting thugs that are looting their own people, that are exploiting the West to expand and dominate the world and export their anti-family values to capture culture down to the individual. They don't even want you to have a family. So Putin described it as a total evil. And I think that's the best way to describe it. What's hijacked America, what has dissolved our borders, has allowed hundreds of thousands of kids to be sex traded on record, not even debated, Senate reports, is total evil. That's not America. Our country has been hijacked. Like, we don't blame the Germans today for Hitler. The point is that we are run by a very extremely evil force that the CIA admits they've overthrown over 50 countries and put dictators in most cases. Starting with Mohammed Mossadegh in 53 and Operation Ajax that used false flags. So there are so many programs like this and so many things. So there's been a coup in America. It's fighting a civil war with individuals that just want to be left alone. It's waging war on us. They're cutting off our energy. They're cutting off our pipelines. They're jacking up all our prices. They are at war. Our government is not our government. It is at the top. There are a lot of good people in it. It is waging war against us, and it's the same war it's waging against Russia. Now, China is an enemy of the West. It was set up by the globalists, the communist Chinese, in 49 to be a system to take over the world but work under the globalists. The Chinese have double-crossed the globalists in the last 10 years. There's a real fissure there, and that's driven Russia and China together. But Russia is not expansionist. They don't need to be. They got so much land and resources. China has to be expansionist, and they're very totalitarian and communist because they were trained by the globalists. And they are expanding. They are taking over. They have spies. They own movie studios. They're brainwashing people. They've got sex operatives. I would say the capability of the Chinese spy-wise and flex-wise political, cultural power to infiltrate and overturn American institutions is 100 times the Russians' conservative. I mean, it's dominant. And even though the Chinese communists and the globalist West, the Anglo-American West, have split, they still have the same program to undermine Christianity and free market and the family to collapse us. The Chinese communists don't let that anti-family stuff go in their country. They put you in jail for it because they know it's poison. But they're the main funders still attacking American culture. So while they battle with our elites, they're still ideologically aligned, but they're attacking the American people. So China and Hollywood and the CIA are the three-headed dragon destroying America, destroying our culture. The Russians are projecting an idea that would be good for America of open trade and freedom and joint alliances and joint commerce and joint space and joint everything that we need with the whole world. And I would love to see China freed. I'd love to see Europe freed from the dictatorship of the European Union. And just all of us work together. It's unlimited what we can do. But we have to move past this warfare model. We have to move past this crap. And we have to literally get back to the Renaissance idea of the Great Enlightenment with Christianity and move forward, or we're going to destroy ourselves. But to say that Russia can flex any influence in America, I would say, again, the Russian influence, and I don't mean this mean, is pitiful, okay? I mean, I wish more people were hearing Vladimir Putin talk about the family and speak out against the New World Order, because what he's saying is true. They basically block it 98%. The communist Chinese are running most of our universities. They've got spies everywhere. They control the Democratic Party. They've run our industry in the ground. They order our pipelines shut off, our coal power plants shut off. They're shut off like that. They open 3 coal power plants a week. We close 1 a week. I mean, we are imploding. We are under attack. And I'm recognizing that the same forces attacking Russia are the same ones attacking America, because they don't want Christian, hardworking cultures to reemerge and lead the world out of this. And potentially the United States, if it was back under the control of the people, and Russia back under the control of the people, in a cultural alliance of working together and building. And look, I mean, Russia's like the big super juicy Marilyn Monroe for capitalists. They were real capitalists. It's got 3 times the resources, all the oil, the gold, the silver, the mines, the uranium, the helium. I mean, the list, it's got everything we need. So if we were really a free market culture, we'd be trying to get hitched up with Russia. And that's what General Flynn and many other statisticians have said, is the real alliance would be America and Russia could dominate the world geographically just with soft power and industry, build up all the third world and make the world a utopia. But instead, we're not doing that. So I would like to end this warfare economy. I'd like to see Russia cleaned up and its corruption dealt with. That Putin admits they have that problem. So do we. And I would love to really see economic alliances, and out of those, it's just like when Trump visited the North Korean dictator and showed him computer renderings of 50-story high rises and explained, you understand, South Korea has hundreds of times the wealth you have. You just got to free your people, and we'll put resorts in and golf courses. We can do this in a decade. And he wanted to do it, but the communist Chinese told Kim Jong-un, you aren't allowed to do that because they control it. Again, so the real problem is Hollywood, the CIA, central bankers, and the Federal Reserve, and the Chinese communists. They're the problem. If the Russians were in our business, if the Russians were pushing us around, if the Russians were cutting off my pipelines, meanwhile the globalists are blowing up Russia's pipeline, if Russia did any of this stuff, they'd be my enemy. And I'd be calling for Putin's assassination. But they're not. Russia isn't up our rear ends. The New World Order are the ones raping us.
So, Alex, let's also talk about the role of Germany, because, as you know, I'm a German. I'm here in Cologne, and the role of Germany is especially important, I guess, as we are probably the most important ally of the US here in the heart of Europe. And we are as well the main arms supplier in Europe to Ukraine. And our government has pledged to support Ukraine bis zum letzten Ukrainer, to the last Ukrainian soldier, as we say here in Germany. So, Alex, how do you see Germany's role in this war? What can you say to my German audience as an American?
I mean, I would tell your German audience, the same people that put you under lockdowns and rode over you with horses are the same ones launching this war. And Germany's been guilted because of World War II. Germany doesn't owe the world anything. Germany lost 20 plus million people in that war. Once the Nazis were done, the Nazis were done. So stop letting the EU and the people that run the US guilt you into, you've got to now go out and prove how good you are and fight the Russian Nazis, or you're helping Hitler. Because I've heard that propaganda, and I would just tell Germans that you're suffering because of the pipeline being blown up by Biden. He bragged he was going to blow it up. Preposterous, the Russians did it. And you're going to suffer on the front lines of this new war that's spilling over. And Germany doesn't have any guilt. But if Germans have this thing and want to be guilty, well, then redeem yourselves by stopping World War III. We'd really appreciate that. But I don't think the Germans need to redeem themselves. The point is that you need to not be under the EU dictatorship. You need to reject socialism. You need to reject the EU edicts and propaganda. You need to reject the EU open borders program that Russia's rejected, that's designed to destroy your country. We all face a corporate New World Order fascist system that uses socialism and communism at the grassroots to control us, but on top of it is tax exempt and raping the world. And I just call for Germany to not commit social suicide. Even the Dalai Lama says, hey, Germany needs to be able to be Germany, and England needs to be able to be England. And instead, they see any sovereign, formerly powerful nation as a threat in this global government. So I tell Germans, stand up and be strong again, and stand up for your country, and stand up against the totalitarians. Because when they got rid of the Berlin Wall, all they did was fold the Stasi into West Germany, and basically you're almost back where you were. And so say no to the Stasi, say no to the tyranny, say no to Marcus Wolf 2.0, and stand up for what's right and be proud of your heritage.
Gefällt dir dieses Interview und die Inhalte auf meinem Kanal? Dann kannst du mich ganz einfach unterstützen, indem du mir ein Abo schenkst, dieses Gespräch mit all deinen Freunden und Bekannten teilst und einen Kommentar für den Algorithmus dalässt. Und jetzt ganz viel Spaß beim weiteren Schauen des Interviews.
So, Alex, you just mentioned the Nord Stream, the blow up of Nord Stream, probably the most important pipeline that we had in the past. Now it's not working anymore. So the famous US journalist Seymour Hersh suspects that US was responsible for the attack. I'm pretty sure you would agree on that, right? So it was basically an act of terrorism against probably the most important partner in Europe. the German politicians are still used to say that the US is still our most important ally. We still even talk about our friends in the US. So
sure, let's be clear. Let's be clear. America loves Germans. America loves everybody. Okay, and the second largest ethnic background here is German. I mean, I'm like half German. We love Germans, but when you say the U.S. is still our biggest ally, the U.S. is gone. The U.S. is run by the New World Order. Now, we can get our country back, but just like when Germany was run by Hitler, Germany was gone. Okay? Or like when, Xi Jinping is in control of China. That's not the Chinese people. That's a dictator. Okay? So just be clear. America's gone. So when Germans do what they think Americans want and what our elites say, you're not helping Germany. You're not helping Europe. You're not helping yourself. You're not helping America. You're not helping Ukraine. You're helping the greedy BlackRocks and the big mega corporations that are running this war. Sorry, I'm ranting.
Yeah, no worries. But that's a good point. Let's also talk about the agenda.
Sure. Just real fast on Nord Stream, though.
Yeah.
I know you know this, but I'm going to answer your question. I'm sorry I'm talking over you.
Okay.
Biden said if the Russians go into Ukraine, we will get rid of the Nord Stream pipeline one way or another. Victoria Nuland said they get rid of it. And then we even know the Navy sailors, they train in Panama to do it because the Navy SEALs report back to Congress. There's oversight. So we know they blew it up. We know how they blew it up. And so for anybody to say that, Cy Hirsch says they blew it up, Cy Hirsch has the witnesses. But everybody knows that Obama is the third administration of Obama, really. Everybody knows Biden blew up the pipeline. And it's a crime against humanity to cut off that power. And the same day they blew it up, that other pipeline out of Europe opened up. So this whole thing is coordinated. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. I just remember as our Chancellor Olaf Scholz was in the US, I think it was February 22, and he was on a press conference together with Joe Biden, and Joe Biden was asked about Nord Stream, and he said publicly on a press conference, we're gonna bring it to an end beside the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. And so how do you see the German Chancellor on the performing as probably the most important politician here in Europe?
Well, at first he was a little put the brakes on, but now he's completely opened up and is doing whatever the people that have hijacked our country that run NATO are doing. Now NATO wants war with China, and I don't like Xi Jinping or communist Chinese, but I don't want war with China. This is all, look, tyrants and corrupt bureaucrats always talk themselves into a bigger war. We're already in World War III, according to all the top analysts. The only question is, does it go nuclear? And Russia can't afford to lose this, so they're going to keep doubling down, and it's just going to get worse, and we're going to destroy ourselves. This is insane. And so I know why Medvedev got a little bit sarcastic a few weeks ago and said, okay, let's just have a nuclear war, was trying to get people to think about how dangerous this is. Now they've got drones attacking the Kremlin. 2 weeks after Zelensky said we're going to attack them with drones on their victory day, and then our media said Putin launched a false flag. So the Ukrainians, with U.S. help, NATO help, are launching drones, big ones, not just those little ones, into airports, into military bases, into the strategic bomber forces, 200 miles, 300 miles inside Russia. And then they attack and then say, oh no, Putin did it to himself. Well, you can't say we're going to attack the Kremlin next week, and then the Kremlin gets attacked and say Putin did it. Yes, do government stage false flags? Could the Russians stage false flags? It's a tactic, yes. But I'm saying, you don't say, I'm going to attack you with drones next week, and then you attack them with drones, and then say, oh, we didn't do that, Putin did it. It's just, and then you look at Zelensky. Nothing against the fact he likes to wear leather and high heels and was reportedly let's just say a operative before he was in the media. And I don't mean an intelligence operative, another type of operative that works at night. And he's totally compromised. You look at him, he's obviously on drugs. He looks completely out of his mind. And I'm seriously just, this whole thing has disaster written all over it. It needs to stop, like Trump said. And Trump got poo-pooed when he said, if I get reelected, I can end this in one day. The United States is paying 90% of the money. The president can cut it off like that. And so they go, oh, he's boasting. He couldn't stop the war. Baloney. Boom, it's over. Funding's cut. And then Trump goes to Putin and says, okay, we'll do a peace deal. And these Russian-held areas are pipelines. Those are yours. You've got a security deal, and they won't enter NATO, and it's all over. Same thing Putin's been asking for the whole time.
So, Alex, you just mentioned a few times already the globalist agenda. I think the most important institution is the World Economic Forum in this. And they just launched, as we remember, in 2020, the Great Reset, the so-called Great Reset. So it was during that time, the pandemic, the so-called pandemic that affected poor people the most. And now the war also affects the working class people everywhere, all over the world. So how do you see the current developments taking place as part of this greater agenda of WEF?
Well, that's what I was getting at earlier, is you have the Fortune 500 that are run by what the globalists call the Anglo-American establishment, which is the old British Empire model that then was able to take over the United States to a great extent and the rest of the world. It's not the British people, but it's that corporate system that came out of the City of London, that smaller city within London, the City of London within London. It all comes out of the British East India Company. It comes out of the Opium Wars and the British control of China. And they've been the dominant force basically for 300 years. Before that, it was the Spanish and the Portuguese. And so World War II and World War I was all about the Austro-Hungarian Empire getting too big for its britches. All of this has been marching towards this point. So when you see Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, it is simply the public arm for recruiting politicians and leaders to penetrate the cabinets of the world, like an intelligence agency. We think of the Chinese, the Russians, the U.S. doing it. Really, the WEF is just a modern arm of the Bilderberg Group, that is a modern arm of the Committee of 300, that is a modern arm of the British East India Company. And this is in mainline PhD publications, and they don't even debate this. CFR writes books about it, how they run everything, how they're the super class, how they do it all. And they've decided to end the family as we know it and make us all worldwide, no matter whether you're Chinese, Russian, or American, or British, or Mexican, or South African, or Sudanese. They've decided to make us all basically born into the system, raised in a commune, programmed by robots, and that's even if we're allowed to live. You will eat bugs, you will own nothing, you'll like it. I mean, this is a THX 1138, Brave New World, literal hellhole. And Aldous Huxley, before he died in 1961, wrote Brave New World Revisited, nonfiction, and said, hey, my brother runs the UN. It's a real plan. We wrote this book in 32 or 31 about what the world's really going to be like by the year 2020. And they haven't gotten there yet, but they're trying. These are dystopian mad scientists at the WEF as the mouthpiece of the British East India Company, Committee of 300. And if you look at the Trilateral Commission, CFR, World Institute of International Affairs, Bilderberg Group, Club of Rome, UN Security, all of it is less than 300 people. They run everything. And China was working with them to get the industry and the power and the weapons. They've now double-crossed. And Russia's saying, we're not going to be part of this. And so Russia's seen as the big plum because it has all the resources and as the weakest to be able to take out. And so yet again, like Napoleon and like Hitler, they're making their move on Russia because Russia's seen as big and sparsely populated compared to these other places. And so another authoritarian system is making its move on Russia. And that's what we're facing here. So let's hope the Russians can withstand it.
So what do you say? Like, is there any possibility that the people can fight this globalist agenda? You know, here in Germany, we had so many big demonstrations going on as well. Here on the border in France, there are the Gilets jaunes, the Yellow Vests, fighting the war, fighting the system of Emmanuel Macron. So do you think that this will lead to a kind of system change by the people, or like in the French Revolution, for example? Or do you think this will not gonna happen again?
Well, the American Revolution was under control and done right. The French Revolution was run by the left-hand path for folks, the Jacobins, and was really bad. And then, of course, brought in Napoleon and those folks right after it. But protesting's great, running around, all that. But if people started actually going and protesting at the houses of the globalists, if they started pulling their money out of the companies of the globalists, which is happening with BlackRock, if they started exposing the actual controls, and the Dutch farmers have been told they're going to shut down most of their farms by 2030. Mm-hmm. 1/3 of the food in the world's produced there. I mean, this is economic warfare against us all. We need to unify worldwide against the globalists, against the private banks, against BlackRock, against Vanguard, against Larry Fink. And those are the real controllers, the Larry Finks. The Zelenskys are down here, little puppets. And we need to identify that culturally and pull our money out of the big corporations, support mom and pop, and just anything coming out of Hollywood, do the opposite. It's real simple. That you have to culturally pull out of this mentally. We are in the world, but not of the world. We have to pull out of their false world. They're trying to pull over our heads like VR goggles. Hollywood, the culture is a false system that we have to pull off and then get back to basics, get back to what made us great, and get back to innovation and renaissance and a massive space program and a massive undersea program and massive free energy developments. And we need to just get it together and push all the control freaks and manipulators to the side and stop their depopulation plan. And people always ask me, well, are you still on air? How are you doing? Yeah, we're at Infowars.com. People think about, well, if you're not on Twitter or Facebook, where are you? We're on a bunch of radio stations. They stream our show and broadcast it. We're on a lot of TV stations. We're on some cable stations. People can find those, repost those. Because you try to post an Infowars article on Facebook or places, people block it. But if you find our articles elsewhere, or find our clips elsewhere and share them, I'm live weekdays, 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central. That's noon to 4 p.m. Eastern at Infowars.com/show. I do a Sunday show, 4 to 6 p.m. as well. And people can find what the show's all about and hear the guest and really see it for themselves.
Okay, Alex, let's move on to another topic and look into domestic politics in the US. Donald Trump and Joe Biden both have announced they will run again in the 2024 election. You were known during the presidency of Donald Trump as a kind of supporter, even though you later then called him once an idiot during the vaccine campaign. So what do you think? Will Trump have good chances to be elected as president again?
Absolutely. I think the evidence is overwhelming that there was election manipulation going on just with the algorithms and how the media was censoring Trump ahead of the election. What they accused the Russians of doing, U.S. intelligence agencies has now come out in Congress, manipulated the 2020 election to skew votes towards Biden. And now they're trying to put Trump in jail with these weaponized, pun intended, trumped up court cases. And so overall, I like Trump on most issues. I still don't like warp speed or him pushing the shot. He was never for forced shots, so that's a good thing. And I like Trump on trying to stop World War III. So obviously, I'll support Trump over Biden or Gavin Newsom if Biden steps down, or Kamala Harris. But also like Robert Kennedy Jr. Yeah. I think he's really awesome.
And there's one last, Ron DeSantis. What do you think of Ron DeSantis?
I mean, I think he's preferable to the Democrats. I don't think he's perfect. He's got a lot of kind of old line Republican blue blood neocon support. But overall, I think he's got really good policies. I like DeSantis too.
So you can imagine like that Trump will gonna be a president of the United States a second time, right?
If they had the election today, he's 15 points ahead of Biden. He's 35 points ahead of all the other Republicans. He's more popular than ever because the country has gone into a serious recession and the borders collapsed and Biden doesn't even know who he is. And so, yeah, there's a lot of nostalgia for Trump in the country. If they held the election today, he'd win massively.
So, Alex, I would say thank you very much for your time for this very exciting interview, and I wish you all the best.
I wish you and your great audience all the best. People can find me and the censored information at Infowars.com. Thank you so much.
Dear community, I hope you enjoyed this interview. If so, I would be happy if you share it with all your friends, if you leave a comment for the algorithm and subscribe my channel. see you on my next interview here on my channel. Ciao.